Greyhound Amazing America Escorted Tour.
Well, hi, Bob.
Hi, Ted. How are you?
Just fine. Just get in?
Yep, on time as usual.
How'd it go? Everything okay?
Just fine. Not a passenger lost. Here's my trip report.
Thank you.
And here are my passenger questionnaires.
Good. Sit down.
Thanks.
Uh-huh. Not bad. Not bad. Uh-huh.
Look, boss, those questionnaires the passengers filled out, just between you and me,
Go ahead.
well, how do they run?
You mean yours, don't you?
Yes, frankly.
Okay, Bob. Just between you and me. Hold on to your seat. You had Miss Hintz?
Yes, Emma Hintz.
Uh-huh. Well, here's just a part of what she says. Just wonderful. Everything. The bus, the sights, the whole tour. Perfectly wonderful. And here's a friend of yours, Dr. Everett Dolan. My fellow passengers were most pleasant, but our escort, Bob, really made the tour for my wife and me.
Gee, that's nice.
Here's a testimonial for the company. I will never spend another vacation traveling any other way. And this one is from Mrs. J. Hoyt Radfield.
Mm-hmm. Of the Beloit Radfield. Very society. What the French call grande dame.
Sort of scared you, did she?
Only at first.
Well, anyway, she says, I would never have believed it possible. And so they go.
You know, boss, that's what throws me.
Throws you? Why, Bob, that should please you.
Well, what she says here. So many people say that to me. They never would have believed it. I don't understand it either. An escorted tour, that's what we're selling. But to these people, somehow it adds up to a lot more than that. Frankly, I don't get it.
Well, Bob, I think that...
How do you explain that? Get it across to people.
Well, maybe if you told them that we have thousands of these questionnaires, and that almost 80% of our passengers say that their tour was, quote, excellent, would that get the point across?
No, those are just figures. They don't explain anything.
Well, you're an escort, Bob. You've seen it. How'd you explain it? Supposing you could just turn around and face out there and speak to all the people in the world who wouldn't have believed it. What would you tell them?
All the people in the world who wouldn't have believed it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'd just look them in the eye and tell
Don't
them.
tell me, Bob. Tell them.
I'd just look them in the eye like this and tell them about it as it is, as I've seen it. And I guess that, well, in all modesty, I'd have to start out like any escorted tour does, with me meeting the passengers for the first time and welcoming them to the tour, introducing myself, registering them in, giving them their personalized tour booklet, and making sure each one gets his own identification card and special baggage tag. It's awfully important to get a tour started off right, to let every passenger know he's welcome and in good hands. After all, one of the important things about an escorted tour is that it is escorted. So I'm part of the picture. And the point where my job begins is where their troubles end. Because when they check their luggage, they also check their worries and responsibilities and leave all the details up to Greyhound. From then on, and for the whole duration of the tour, their only duty is to themselves, to enjoy themselves. And it's my job to make sure they do. Some job? You bet it is. When we're well out on the highway and everybody's settled down, I like to introduce the passengers to one another. You see, a lot of the fun of touring on a bus is meeting other people, making new friends, finding common interests, whiling away the time in conversation and games. Of course, one of the fascinations of highway traveling is watching the world spin smoothly by, seeing everything close up through a glare-absorbing picture window. Or, when the spirit moves you, relaxing in roomy, air-conditioned comfort and catching up on your reading. Of course, we rotate seats occasionally for variety and a change of scene. From the front seats, you can see the countryside coming at you, full of surprises and the promise of lovely vistas. For me and a lot of passengers, it's a pleasure just to watch those drivers of ours at their job. They're real artists, skillful professionals with millions of safe miles behind them. Nice fellas, too, and they really know their routes in detail, points of interest, local color, that I can pass on to the rest of the bus. One of the swell things about touring by bus is morning and afternoon stops. You're never more than a couple of hours from the comfort and hospitality of carefully selected restaurants and post houses. A coffee break, a chance to stretch your legs, pick up postcards or souvenirs. And every night you stop for dinner and a full night of restful sleep at a comfortable hotel. The bus pulls right up to the hotel marquee, and your reservations have been arranged for you in advance. And I'm there to see to it that everybody's luggage is taken to his room and back again to the bus the following morning. And it seems to me it's conveniences like that, thoughtfulness and courtesy in every detail, that help make an escorted tour the success it is. Quote, excellent. That plus the downright sociability and friendliness of some 30 people, all traveling in a bus and enjoying themselves together.
They're just the same sort of people you'd find in your own hometown. Doctors, teachers, businessmen, housewives, and students. But do you suppose, Bob, that anybody in this company knew exactly how swell those people could be, or how much fun they could have traveling together in a bus?
Must have, or we never would have started all this.
Except we didn't know then whether it'd work or not. Nobody knew, including me. I guess I was the least sure of anybody.
Why you?
Because I was the guinea pig, along with a busload of people. You see, I took out the first Greyhound Escorted Tour. Not so long ago either, Bob. I guess I was just as much a tourist as any one of my passengers. I'll never forget that tour. We were heading for Florida. I remember the thrill I got at Gettysburg when I saw the old muzzle-loading cannon. Seeing them, you can almost hear the thunder of battle. And nearby, you hear even more clearly words of a lawyer from Illinois, words of peace, the great ringing phrases of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Southward, Philadelphia, first capital of our nation. Independence Hall, where the Declaration was signed. Then our national capital. George Washington laid the cornerstone, but the first president to occupy the White House was John Adams. From the White House, you can see the Washington Monument, 555 feet high in white marble. Another founder of our nation, Thomas Jefferson, also has his memorial. We stopped off long enough in Washington to see all the sights. Then, turning south again, we stopped at Washington's home at Mount Vernon, Virginia. A gracious, peaceful home of a peaceful man who founded a country out of the flames of rebellion and war. The days sped by, a kaleidoscope of beauty and fascinating history. Williamsburg, a colonial city restored to perfection. You can even see the old jail where debtors and common criminals were punished. From Williamsburg down into the bluegrass country of Kentucky, home of fast horses and beautiful women. There's even a monument to a horse. Name a man of war, remember? But not all the monuments we saw were man-made. The famous natural bridge was built by tiny trickles of water in millions of years of time. Can you imagine anybody being bored with scenery like the mountainous valleys of the Great Smokies? The people there still live and practice their honorable crafts just as they did 10 generations ago. Excepting now there are tourists to buy their metalwork, wood carvings, and colorful homespun cloth. So much to see. There's the old Spanish city of St. Augustine. The city gates are built of coquina rock. That's where the oldest house in America is. And on it are 4 flags of the 4 powers that have held the city: Spain, France, England, and you guessed it. I think one of the most beautiful scenes I remember of Florida is the box into clear water. Either that or sunlight and ships on harbor waters. The most interesting, the Seminole Indians in the Everglades, hardly touched by the modern life of the towns and cities nearby. But to me, the most exciting thing was that amazing long drive on the overseas highway. Mile after mile of concrete ribbon suspended over the open water of the Gulf, leading on to Key West. A highway over the open sea. Anyway, long before that tour was finished, I knew what we all know now. We proved that our escorted tours are here to stay, that this is the best way to see America, close up, all of it. We had found a wonderful recipe for travel and enjoyment. Just stir together some nice people, provide them with a private bus, a good driver, and an escort to make sure that they get the most out of everything.
And then just leave the rest up to human nature?
Well, yes. And this great, big, beautiful country of ours.
I'm glad you mentioned the country, Ted, because it seems to me sometimes we take too much credit for ourselves. And what country? Why, just take a small part of it.
I know, you're part of the country, New England.
Sure, why not? Besides, it illustrates a point I want to make. Just take New England alone.
Don't tell me, Bob. I'm on your side. You were going to tell them, remember?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. Anyway, here's what I mean. All of New England's hardly as big as the state of Texas, but there's so much to see that has real meaning for all of us. Like, well, the rocky New England coastline. Certainly it wasn't a very hospitable coast to our first colonists, but New England's full of history. In Boston, Old North Church, where the lamp in the belfry signaled the British were coming. Nearby, Paul Revere's home. Yes, in this country of ours, we have lots of shrines of freedom. And many of the first are up there in New England.
Bob, I'm surprised at you, showing such obvious favoritism for any one part of the country. After all, we're a nationwide organization. You have to think of the entire country, the whole continent, United States, Canada, Mexico, and even Alaska. You know, that's one way Americans are lucky. We can get aboard a bus in Boston or Seattle, San Diego or New Orleans, and travel freely without any police state formalities to any one of 2 great nations, north or south of us. Why, right above your little New England is a country as old as ours, where you find a mixture of the old and the new. Montreal, largest city in Canada, is also the 2nd largest French-speaking city in the world. Following the St. Lawrence toward the sea, there's the old city of Quebec. Quebec is the only walled city in North America. Only a few miles from Quebec is the shrine to St. Anne de Beaupré, visited by 2 million pilgrims each year, scene of miraculous healing cures. Traveling east, you reach the Gaspé Peninsula. Gaspé is an old Indian word meaning land's end, and wherever you go there, you're conscious of the nearness of the water. In the sheltered harbors, fishermen unload their catch of cod in the bright sunlight. A corner of the old world, where you feel you've stepped back in only a few miles into the middle of the 17th century. Canada, sharing with us 3,000 miles of friendly border, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. On the west coast is Victoria, capital of the province of British Columbia. Victoria is famous for its flowered walks and gardens. Here, Indian culture and craft work is very much alive. The Indian totems in Thunderbird Park have been collected from every part of the province. Victoria is a great port. At the docks are boats stacked to the gunwales with lumber from the forests inland. Canada, our good neighbor to the north. And what you'll remember when you cross back over our borders, music, color, variety, and the real open-hearted hospitality of friendly people.
But you know, I'm still interested in seeing America first.
A lot of Americans are.
You bet. Like Yellowstone. Every year, millions of people visit there, and thousands of them by Greyhound. It's easy to understand why after you've been there. The swell time you have getting there, seeing living history, not in museums, but right by the roadside. Great country, great history. Why, just think of the Mardi Gras tour.
Hold it, Bob. There are many Greyhound tours. It'd take an hour just to list them, a year to take them all. By that time, there'd be more. You can't cover them all.
What do I do then? This was your idea, remember, to tell all about this.
Well, you said a moment ago, great country, great history. Why not just forget about the tours and talk about that? The country, the history, the people.
Well, that's a big order, too, but I'll try. It shouldn't be too hard because it's all there, just waiting to be seen. New Orleans on the Mississippi Delta, famous for the gaiety of its Mardi Gras carnival. And any time of the year, one of the gayest cities in the world. An exotic combination of old French and modern American. For another charming blend of cultures, San Antonio. Contrast, modern architecture beside a meandering stream. A modern city proud of its Spanish heritage. When you think of the great works of nature, the Grand Canyon comes first. In our western states, things come big. 20 miles from rim to rim, and deeper than any mountain east of the Mississippi. On west to California and San Francisco, our gateway to the east. No city anywhere has a lovelier setting. The Golden Gate, the view of city and harbor from Twin Peaks, the steep hills negotiated by the ancient cable cars, Chinatown, with its exotic architecture and foods. Following the highway north, you pass between stately redwoods, tall as a city's skyscraper. Then, in the middle of Nevada's open ranges, Reno, called the biggest little city in the world. And speaking of big things, how many people realize that at Lake Itasca, the great Mississippi, father of waters, has its beginning? You can cross it with dry feet. Up north there, sparkling lakes and streams are a fisherman's dream, a vacationer's paradise. And in the middle of one of our larger lakes, Mackinac Island, where no car or bus has ever driven, and horses are a man's best friend. Speaking of natural wonders, the East isn't going to take a second place, not with Niagara. And how many of us, or our parents, must have taken a honeymoon ride close to the thunder of the falls? And how many more honeymooners, or just visitors, have seen New York's towering skyline, Gotham-on-Hudson, with the most people, the tallest buildings, the loudest traffic, and liberty, our biggest ideal? Golly, I could go on and on.
Don't you think by now you've about proved your point with that scenorama, that never-ending catalog of wonders?
Well, maybe it can't be proved, Ted, because the point is you have to be there, go there, see those things yourself. That way you make them partly yours forever, because the tour doesn't end when you return, it goes on in your memory. I suppose that's partly the reason every tour ends with a banquet, to prove that that's not the end.
But Bob, these people don't know anything about that, about our farewell banquet.
No, they don't, do they? And they should. You see, the last night out on any tour, all the passengers have a dinner together. It's really done up in style, usually at a fine hotel, the best in town. We have our banquet in a luxurious private dining room all to ourselves. Sometimes we eat buffet style, but however we do it, food and service are the best, and every guest is a guest of honor. By the time we've had all we can eat, we're really in the mood for reminiscence, ready to stop, lean back, and think and talk about the days we've spent together. No speeches, just people telling what their tour has meant to them. But folks, this is your evening, and I'll just turn it over to you. Have any of you any comments or suggestions about our tour that you'd like to make? Mrs. Thompson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Bob. Well, I'd just like to say that I've traveled a lot, both here and abroad. But this was certainly the most delightful trip I've ever taken.
It was well planned. Capable operation all the way. Good hotels. And the restaurants. Boy, I'll be losing weight for weeks.
The only unhappy moment for me on the entire trip is having to say goodbye to all of you.
Let's give Bob a great big hand. Stand up, Bob.
If I'd thought you were going to end up on a plug for yourself.
I'd rather accept it for all our escorts.
Don't worry about the rest of them. They get plenty of plugs, too.
I know they do. Well, I'd better get
Wait
going.
a minute, Bob. What about those people out there?
I don't get you.
Well, remember, they're the ones who wouldn't have believed it. You think they do now?
Well, what else is there to say?
Just one more thing I think they ought to know.
Yes. Yes, I suppose they should, especially since it's true. May I show them?
Certainly.
Here, folks.